Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about a set of laws that aren't written down anywhere, but you see them enforced all the time, every single day. We're diving into the unwritten rules of masculinity and the invisible pressure they put on men. So let's just start with a question that gets right to the heart of it all. If a boy cries when he's in pain, does that make him any less of a man? Just keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through this, because the answer society often gives is surprisingly and pretty rigidly set.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Section 1, Society's Strange Rules. We're going to look at these unwritten laws that kind of dictate how men and women are supposed to act, often from the moment they're born.
And right from the start, we're basically put into these little boxes. You can see it here. For girls, society expects qualities like being nurturing, compassionate, maybe a little shy. But for boys, the script is totally different. It calls for them to be tough, disciplined, and unemotional. They're two very clear, very separate sets of rules. So this strict divide leads us straight into one of the most common and honestly one of the most damaging myths that's taught to boys from a super young age. And that's this idea that real men, they just don't feel pain. Or at the very least, they sure don't show it. So how does this myth get drilled in? Well, it's with simple but really cutting phrases just like this one. Look, he's crying like a girl. I'm sure we've all heard a version of that, right? It's a common taunt used to shame a boy for showing any kind of vulnerability. And the message is crystal clear. Some emotions are for girls, and that means they're totally off limits for boys.
And then it gets taken to the next level. It's not just a taunt from other kids anymore. It becomes a direct command. You are a man, you can't cry. See, this isn't just a suggestion, it's an instruction that ties a person's entire identity to suppressing their feelings. It reinforces this idea that being vulnerable is somehow a violation of being a man.
So all of this builds up into a pretty stark double standard. Let's take a look at how society judges the exact same behaviors completely differently, depending on whether it's a man or a woman doing them. I mean, this table just lays the hypocrisy out in the open. When a woman cares for her spouse, it's seen as her duty. When a man does the exact same thing, he gets mocked as being a slave to his wife. A mother playing with her kids, oh, that's just natural. A father doing it, he's acting like a housewife. It just powerfully shows how these unwritten rules really limit the roles men can play in their own families and emotional lives. So this is the really crucial point. What's the actual human cost of all this pressure? What happens when you force basically half the population to hide how they really feel? Well, the consequence is incredibly serious. When men are taught that they can't express sadness or grief or pain openly, that energy doesn't just vanish. It gets pushed down, buried, and that suppressed pain can fester. And it often comes out as very real, very serious mental health issues, like depression. Just think about men in professions we label as tough, like soldiers in the army. We expect them to be these stoic figures, but behind that uniform, they're still human. They've got kids who call them papa. They miss their partners and their parents. They find real peace and comfort with their families. Their emotional lives are just as rich and deep as anyone's, even if society is telling them to hide it away. So seeing the problem laid out so clearly like this really begs the question, right? How do we fix this? How can we start to move past these really outdated and, frankly, harmful expectations? Well, the answer isn't really about redefining masculinity or femininity. It's about something bigger. It's about expanding our definition of what it simply means to be human. So here are 3 steps we can take toward that new perspective. First, and this is a big one, realize these rules are made up by society. They aren't laws of nature. Second, we have to accept that every single person has the right to their own life and their own choices. And finally, we need to understand that crying is a healthy, natural emotional release for everyone, regardless of gender. And really, it all comes down to this one powerful idea. Humans are humans. We cannot tie anyone within boundaries. We are all individuals first, and every one of us has a unique emotional landscape. Trying to force people into these rigid, gendered boxes, it just doesn't benefit anyone. So, to wrap this up, let's turn the question back to you. We've talked a lot about the unwritten rules for men, but the truth is, these kinds of rules exist for everybody. So, what's one unwritten rule that you follow, maybe without ever even stopping to question why? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.